Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2023-2024 post-budget press conference. I'm Alfred Anthony, and I will be emceeing this event. We have with us the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Strategic Planning, National Development and Statistics, the Honorable Professor Biman Prasad. The Permanent Secretary for Finance, Mr. Sir Gounder, the Chief Executive Officer of the Revenue and Customs Services, Mr. Mark Dixon, and the Chief Executive Officer of the Tertiary Scholarship Loans Scheme, Dr. Hasmukh Rao. The Honourable Minister will provide a short overview of the budget, and then we'll have questions followed by that. I give this time to the Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you. Let me first of all thank all of you, the members of the media, for such keen interest and openness about what we've been saying, before the budget, and your active participation during the budget address, but also now. I want to take this opportunity to thank my Permanent Secretary, Sri Gounder, CEO of FRCS, Mark Dixon, Hasmukh, CEO of TELS, and for joining me this morning or this afternoon. By now, you have a very clear idea. All I want to say is that the budget was formulated using a very clear, transparent, open process, which involved a large group of stakeholders, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, heads of statutory organizations, ministers, permanent secretaries. And so all that has helped us to come up with a very, very clear, well thought out, balanced budget for this time in our country. It lays down very clearly the foundation for management of our debt, management of our economy, management of our policies, management of our revenue and expenditure. And if you put all that together, it is a very good foundation and a clear foundation to take the country forward, from where we are. It is not going to be easy. This budget was never going to be easy, but what you have seen delivered today, and you'll find more details, you will appreciate that it has been carefully crafted. It looks after our people. It has provided relief to hundreds of thousands of people in different ways, but it has also set the economy and the policies on a path where not only we are going to address the most critical issue of high debt, but also set in policies and processes so that we achieve future growth. So going forward, we need growth, we need to manage our revenue, we need to manage our expenditure, particularly manage the waste that we have experienced over the years. And this budget lays down that very, very clearly. So I am very pleased that we've been able to come up with this well thought out, balanced budget for our country and for our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. We will now take questions from the floor. Yes.
The tough questions will be answered by the Permanent Secretary.
So, first of all, congratulations on the delivery of your first budget. Obviously, one of the big news was the forgiving of the TELS debt, 650 million, if I'm not mistaken. With the forgiving of this debt, how is government hoping to recover this amount going forward? Is this by having the graduates serving the country?
Precisely. In fact, the first point I want to make, which I didn't have time to make in the budget speech, was that we found out that out of the $650 million that is owed to the government, on average, we were collecting a very, very small percentage of that every year. So in fact, the debt was not being paid. Then we found out that almost $100 million of debt owed to us would have been owed by students who do not have the ability to pay, or who did not complete the course, who just took loans, allowances, but never completed courses. So the whole scheme was not managed in the way that it should be. So what we have done is instead of paying the amount, all those students will now save the country as per the bond rule. And if they don't, they will still be pursued to pay the amount. The new scholarship, based on merit, based on skills, based on capacity in universities, based on different criteria, is the best way forward for all our families, students, and for our manpower planning in this country. But the most significant thing is that that burden was not only on the students, that burden was on the parents. They signed as guarantors. So what we have done is lifted that burden of not only the more than 50,000 students, but 50,000 parents, guardians, families who are bothered by the debt on their head. And so we have killed two birds in one. One, we have allowed ourselves to create a new direction, a new strategy, a new way of providing scholarships, but ensuring that we use that to produce the appropriate skills, direct students, and make sure that these students save our country in whatever capacity they can. So I think this is a game changer. This is a very fundamental change, and I think one that will be appreciated by everyone, including the students and our young people. We are actually investing in the future now so that they can contribute to the prosperity and growth of our country.
Dr. Wow, can you explain what happens to the continuing students who are under TELS at the moment?
So their loan agreement, as announced by Honorable Minister, will be converted into bond agreement. So their loan will be converted into a scholarship. So they will continue on the basis that they're continuing their studies currently. So the tuition and allowance will be paid in accordance within what they have signed in their agreement.
Minister, just regarding the many were expecting the personal income tax to increase. What kept you from this particular increase for?
That's a very intelligent question, a very good one, and I'm glad you asked that, and thank you for that. That is a very considered decision, because when you look at, as an economist here, I understand this very well. You have people below poverty line, then you have people on the margins, then you have people slightly above the poverty line. And so all those people between 16 and 30, and given the cost of living rise over the last several years, we understood that group is a very, very important group. We didn't want to put burden on those people who are just there, and so we understood that they are an important part of the disposable income that they earn and spend in the economy. So if we had reduced the threshold, then we would have had to provide, we would have had to deal with another group who might have faced difficulty in terms of making the ends meet, in a proper way. So we were very conscious. So it is purely it is a compassionate decision. It is an economic decision. It is also a social welfare, social well-being, strategy to ensure that we do not do something so that people in that group actually fall below the poverty line.
Professor Prasad from Fiji Village. So what can you say about the cost of living situation going forward in the next financial year, provided that VAT will be increasing on non-essential items to 15%? Certain foods and drinks prices will be going up as well. Vehicle prices will be going up as well. So what's your assessment of that?
As I said, these are things that we had to do, but there are a lot of other safeguards that we have maintained, and one that you just raised is maintaining the income threshold, because that would have been an easy choice for a government that has difficulty in dealing with the debt with revenue, but we didn't deliberately because we undertook all those concerns. In terms of the overall cost of living, you will see, just a few days ago, fuel prices have come down. The freight costs are going down. We have reduced the duty on some, items. We have added, prescription medicine on zero bed. So these are policies that will help a lot of those people who may feel that they might have to pay a little bit extra on some of the items that they don't buy on a daily basis. So in some sense, it's a very balanced approach, in terms of how we've crafted the whole tax system in this budget.
Sir, just back to TELS, what happens to those students that want to work from overseas and pay their dues? Will they be allowed, or do they have to clear their debt before they leave Nandi?
They'll be allowed.
And just on the duty-free, duties on importations, how will we protect our local industries, such as the meat industry, shipping sector?
You see, there are agriculture budget has had a significant increase, and you will notice that first time we have provided subsidies for non-sugar crop sectors for weedicide and fertilizer. So we want our producers to understand some of these new policies and how they can source help. So we're doing a lot of the things in this budget, in terms of promoting productivity in agriculture. We don't think that these reduction in duties is going to affect, in fact, the local producers cannot meet the demand all the time. And so in light of the cost of living, in light of the protein and other demands of our ordinary people, we feel that this is a very good balance. On one hand, we are providing additional funding to agriculture so that there are otherwise protection may not necessarily work all the time. If you look at some industries, they've had protection for years, yet they're producing the same level, same volume. So we are looking at other strategies, other incentives to ensure that we raise local production, which can meet the local demand as well as going beyond the local demand and exporting.
Professor Prasad, just for clarification, the government intends to write off the 650 on TELS debt. On the government's balance sheet, how does it intend to classify this? Will it write off this as bad debts?
No, in fact, it's really not. We're saying that we are forgiving that loan, and in place of that forgiveness, you sign a bond. You save the country. If you don't, then you still have to pay. Because what we find is that a lot of people who are saving the country are also not able to pay because they either are on a very small salary, they haven't completed the program, so they don't have the job. So there are, as I said, about 100 million would never be paid But what we can say to those people is, you have to save the country. You can't just leave, and if you don't, you still have to find ways to, So we are trying to help them by also making sure that they also contribute to the country. So it's a win-win situation for the students, their parents, their families, as well as for the country and for the government. And because that money is not coming anywhere.
Just to follow up again, because it puts you in a legal jerk, because in their contract, it doesn't intend that the students be held under bond. So will you be re-signing contracts against with these students?
The change in the act, as you would have heard, as a consequential bill, has already been presented to Parliament.
Okay. To Mr. Dixon, you're into your last quarter. What is FRC's projections or estimates into the collections of income or revenue for year ending 22 and 23?
Thank you for the question. Look, I'm pleased to say that, and it was mentioned earlier on this morning, that our economy is recovering really strongly from COVID across all the sectors. So FRCS is confident that we will deliver the annual forecast this year, or come very, very close. So we had a very, very strong start to the year. Revenue collections probably quietened off a little bit in the trade space, but as you know, it's the end of June today, and I'm getting regular forecasts, and the results for June are very strong again. So we're confident we'll meet the forecast. More importantly, with the changes that we've implemented through these budget changes, you'll see the revenue collection grow substantially next year. And again, with those measures, we're very confident that we can deliver that revenue collection. And you've heard today how that will be used in terms of significant increases in expenditure on health, on education, on infrastructure. So it's a little bit about a bit of pain for everybody. We want every single person to actually shoulder a bit of responsibility for paying a little bit of tax in order for us to make these substantial changes on the expense side of the budget to deliver for Fiji in terms of all those things you heard this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Minister, can I just, can you just confirm how much the government is going to get in revenue from the tax restructure, like in tax revenue, and how much less are you going to borrow?
It's all provided in that fiscal supplement, the breakdown of the forecast, revenue from tax, from direct, indirect tax, government fees and fines. So, all the detail is in the fiscal supplement. You can get the exact figures from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I'm Christiana from FBC. So just in relation to the TELs, what arrangements will the government now make with the Ministry of Education? Because we understand that we have graduates now who have gone through the program and took loans, but they don't have jobs after they graduate. So what will the government do in terms of investing in career counseling teachers in school so that students understand their career path and not choose fields that are already over-congested?
Yeah, Christiana, that's a good question. This is precisely what I was saying, that this new approach to the scholarship and the different categories and different criteria will actually address that, because what happened in the previous system, the gate was open. So anybody, anywhere, the universities started, lowering the marks for entry, and so you had people going into areas where they couldn't successfully complete or find a job, whereas there were huge areas where if they had gone into, they would find not only jobs quickly but better paying jobs. So this new approach is going to be based on proper research. There have been studies done in the labor market, demand, supply, the match, mismatch, and we would be able to correct all that so that in future, we don't get to a situation, like what you were saying.
And Mr. Dixon, I understand this is a very good day for you, given that tax revenue collection has increased by 38%. What is the outlook now for Fiji if it carries on with this momentum from a tax revenue collection perspective?
Well, I think the measures we've introduced today will probably see, for the first time ever, a revenue collection next financial year that touches $3 billion. So that's a significant milestone, but it's done in a controlled and measured way. So again, you have to look at why we collect revenue to support those significant enhancements in expenditure on things that are important to everybody in Fiji. So I think that today's budget is progressive, it's positive, and it's measured, but it allows us to spend on health, education, infrastructure, all those things that every single Fijian will benefit from. Thank you.
Okay. Another question. You were talking about the wastage in government operations. What sort of systems are in place internally now to address wastage and all the unnecessary spending of resources in the government departments?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was answering a call from Parliament.
The wastage in the government system that you were talking about.
Yeah.
How it's how you're trying to sort it out.
We might have
Also
to.
internal systems that are in place, like we're putting in place to address that.
I might have to be here for another 2 hours to explain to you about all the wastages and how it happened and how we are going to deal. We're strengthening all our systems, monitoring, planning, coordination, as I pointed out in my budget speech, so that we cut down on wastages. We're strengthening the Auditor General's office. We're strengthening our own audit, section within the Ministry of Finance. So it'll be better coordination and better management and better prioritization of expenditure.
Professor, can you talk about how government plans to service the loans, the debt you mentioned, $1 billion a year to service the debt? How do you plan to do that with the revenue projection?
It's all part of the budget architecture. You look at how much you can collect from revenue, taxes, fees, fines, charges, how much you can get in terms of dividends from government commercial companies or statutory organizations, different. So that's one part of the revenue. The other, of course, is looking at growing the economy. The bigger the size of the economy, the faster the economy grows, the more tax will come from tax revenue will come to government. So we are focused on not only just revenue policies, but focused on growth policies. So unless you have growth, you can have the best tax policies, the best compliance, the best coordination. But if the economy doesn't grow, you're not going to increase your tax revenue. So what we are saying is, in this budget, we're controlling our deficit, we're controlling our expenditure, trying to raise as much revenue as we can, given the size of the economy, given the imperatives of what's happening. So, it's a balance that we would pursue. And when you have a very high level of debt, obviously, the task is much more difficult. So it's a three-pronged approach. We grow the economy, control expenditure, raise more revenue where you can, spend money where it is appropriate, where it's needed, where it's going to support social and economic infrastructure. So that's what this budget has done.
So I have a question regarding FRA. I understand 387.6 million has been allocated to the Fiji Roads Authority. Now, considering that by December 2022, FRA had already exhausted its budget for the 22-23 financial year, and considering that they still owe money to contractors, what is the government's plan to address this issue? And considering the state of our roads, not just our rural roads, but our urban roads as well, the amount of potholes and new roads being dug up, what sort of assurance is the government giving to the public that this will be an area that the government will look into?
I can give this assurance to the people that we are focused. As I announced some measures in the budget today, we are going to create PWD or bring back PWD again. That the primary focus initially would be in the transition to look at our rural roads. You're absolutely right, Rashika. The way in which Shail, Rashika is on your side. You're absolutely right. FRA in many ways was a disaster in terms of how they managed the expenditure. We believe that there was significant waste. In fact, they spent more than $3 billion over the years without a strategic plan, without prioritizing expenditure, roads, where it needs to be done. So when we came into government, they had spent almost all their budget in 6 months. So we provided additional funding to FRA to address some of the critical urgent issues. In this budget, the allocation is enough to ensure, and the focus really is on maintenance. And you're absolutely right. I mean, why are we building new roads when we can't maintain the existing roads? Why are you building something in Suba when it can be postponed at a later date? So we now have a new national infrastructure plan as well, and the planning office in the Ministry of Finance will be strengthened so that these things are monitored. The prioritization is monitored, the implementation is monitored, the value for money, the new architecture that we want to bring in the new FRA board is already looking at it, how contracts are issued. So there were a lot of issues and failure of governance and management within the organization over the years to give value for money to the people and to ensure that the roads are fixed. So we are correcting all that. It'll take time. As I said, we will not get everything right, in one go, in a short period of time. But I understand the frustration that people have. I personally get, calls, about roads in different areas. So, and those are perfectly legitimate, and people have the right to raise questions. And in this budget, we are going to address that urgently.
Thank you, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, we take two final questions.
We can take a few more.
Professor Prasad. Professor Prasad, can you give us an information about the bus fare subsidy, the 10% subsidy? Will it continue in the next financial year?
Yeah. We extended it until end of July. It was a COVID measure, so we wanted the transition to continue, and that will end in July.
So just another question, when will the prices of cigarette and alcohol go up? Is it tomorrow or 1st August?
Effective today. Effective today.
July. What about the
last one.
Payment by the government? It's going to pay the FNPF that was forfeited during COVID. Is that for everyone, or is it only for the civil service?
No, that specific measure was for the decision that the military government made in 2011 to abruptly cancel the contract that they had with the pensioners of the allowance they were getting. So a lot of them were suddenly, drastically forced to go on a lower pension rate, pension amount. And these are people who are in their late 60s and 70s, and FNPF can't do anything about it right now because of the law. So we as a government, we have said that in addition to what they are getting, they will get the social pension. So if they are over 70, they get 125. If they are over 65, and between 65 and 70, they get $115. So we're providing that additional relief and support to those pensioners who were unjustifiably, unilaterally, hard done by the military government at the time.
Thank you.
Professor Prasad,
Two final
Professor
questions.
Prasad, I just have one question on external trade. Given that the framework, the trade policy framework is up for review, and given your scheduled meeting with the World Trade Organization next month, I just have a question on how
That's a question to DPM Kamkamida. He's the trade minister. But it's an important meeting, and I have been part of WTO negotiations in the past, but he will give you a very clear answer.
Yes, sir. My question is on that, but specifically on the, given that the BPO sector have been increasing drastically over the past few years, but we have only the Southern Cross cable that we rely on, and the World Trade Organization forecasted this year that service trade in the Asia-Pacific region is increasing. How does the government plan to invest in, say, another cable, alternatively in the incident that we have, God forbid, a natural disaster like the one in Tonga this year, where it closed down all their connectivity to the rest of the world. And given that Fiji is going in that direction, how does the coalition government plan to invest in that area? And also follow up on the trade policy framework, given the scrutiny that the World Trade Organization is now undergoing, that they have never successfully passed a trade negotiation. How do you plan to leverage having a policy framework?
No, there are a lot of generalizations in what you've said, about WTO. A lot of trade negotiations have been completed. A lot of things have happened to support, countries. But I think from our point of view, as I said, we want to ensure that, we have a good monitoring system. We ensure that we are able to, with FRCS, process and understand, the type of businesses, whether it's BPO or others, and facilitate them, on the basis that it is in the interest of the country.
Hi, Mr. Dixon. A criticism of the last budget was the timing of the proposed tax changes, and that left taxpayers unprepared to deal with those changes. What's going to be different this time around? What is the FRCS prepared to do to help taxpayers adjust to these new changes?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it goes to the fact that we're now collaborating all the time with the businesses that we seek to serve. So we've looked very carefully at all of the tax revenue policy changes in this budget. Where those changes support the ease of doing business, and actually they are good for business, then we will implement them sooner rather than later. Where we need a bit of time for businesses to prepare, then we're giving them that time to prepare. So for each of the measures, you'll see a range of effective dates. Where it's simple, where business want it to happen sooner, we're making sure it happens sooner. So everybody in business, nobody likes 3 rates of VAT. Everybody will be happy for us to move to 2 rates of VAT. We'll make that effect from the start of the financial year. It makes good sense to do that. When you look at the new measures, for example, in relation to NCDs, what a fantastic new measure around looking after people's health and well-being. But we understand that to do that, we need to take some time and businesses need to be ready. So with that policy, it'll be implemented from the 1st of January. So for all of the changes, we've looked at the effective date and we've been mindful and considerate of the fact that we need to support industry at this time and be very conscious around the ease of doing business. So if you look across those changes as well, you'll see a simplifying of the tax administration system. That's good for business. Thank you.
Professor Prasad, one last question, please.
We'll take the last question and
Professor Prasad, there's a fuel rebate for bus companies operating in Vanolevu and Tavione. What about the shipping sector, especially after shipping operators are calling on fare increase because of the fuel price?
They already have it.
Yep.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Professor Prasad, just a final question.
No, she's got a final question.
So just what is being done to address the skills gap provided a huge loss in labor, and we see that the 1 million grant is being given to Pacific Polytech Limited. So what's being done to address the skills gap?
As I said in my budget speech, the area of technical education and the policy was a disaster under the previous government. They set up these technical colleges. We spent more than $20 million, went down the drain. Everything just went into RIM. So what we have tried to do is to rescue some of that. We are strengthening, skills training. We are also going to review the NTPC levy. We are going to bring back apprenticeship. There is a skills development section within the new scholarship approach, where we will be supporting all those institutions, including Pacific Polytech, who are trying to run competency-based training. Things like that you can train people in a short period of time, tile laying, painting, basic, carpentry, and we're running shortage of, short of that kind of labor as well. So, government has understood that. We have a very clear policy. The Ministry of Education is onto it, and they're working with all technical institutes, including Pacific Polytech, to deliver those programs. Thank you.
Professor Prasad, just
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
finally, how confident are you that this budget will pass, given what we've seen this year with a one-vote margin between the PM and the leader of opposition at the time? So how confident are you that this budget will be passed?
I kind of consider that an irrelevant question. The budget will be passed. The coalition government is strong. Will be there for 4 years. 3.5 years left now. So just relax and be happy.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our post-budget press conference for today. Now.